Welcome to Music Ed Tech Talk, a podcast exploring the topics of music, education, technology, and the intersections between them, with a special focus on the productive and creative process. I'm your host, Robbie Burns.
There we go.
This has been a long time coming. Thanks so much for doing this.
Yeah, no, I appreciate your patience in getting it to happen. So, and I'm like so freaked out by everything that is coming with this damn virus that it's actually perfect to get my mind off of things for a little while. So
that's good. My first question was going to be,
and I'm cool with it, and I'm cool with talking about it within the context of like the podcast. That's fine. Like there are literally no topics that are off limits, but it's just like not just reading Twitter and then getting spun up in my own damn head. So yeah, it's good. So.
Yeah, well, I was going to ask if you have if any schools or universities that are relevant to your life are already calling it.
Yeah, Shenandoah, where I teach, is just announced. Hours ago, just announced that we're on spring break right now, and then for at least the next 2 weeks is going to be online, and this is pure speculation. I have no inside info from any of the powers that be. You'll be surprised to hear this, but they don't exactly consult the adjunct tuba euphonium professor when deciding whether to keep campus open or not. Even though I've probably read as much as any of them have in the last week about this. But anyway, that I think it's going to be for a lot longer than 2 weeks. So that's just where I think this is headed. So.
Yeah, that seems to be it. Apparently, there is a board meeting in Howard County Public Schools, the district where I teach, tonight.
Right.
And they canceled this big budget one tomorrow where there's music budget cuts that were on the table for tomorrow. And now it's got us all kind of freaked out that's being tabled. And I don't know. I sit next to, I guess we should establish this. We've talked about it before online, but I sit right next to Ben Denny every day. And
oh, geez, I'll pray for you.
That guy's got ideas.
He does have ideas. Yeah. The only way to get him to not share them is when I just share all of mine without stopping, and then he's figured out over the decades it's easier to just let me go until till the wind up runs out, and then he can get in his 2 cents. But yeah, he's one of my dearest friends in the whole world.
I'm sorry we don't have a job opening at Ellicott Mills.
Yeah. Yeah, I am not cut out to do what you all do. So, yeah, I teach for 5 straight hours of college lessons, and I'm spent. I'm just like, I don't know how. Yeah, my wife's like, I do that every day. I'm like, well, I know you're also crazy. So, yeah. Anyway.
You have to be. Does she teach middle school?
She does. She teaches. She is the head band director at Rachel Carson Middle School in Fairfax County.
Ah, okay. So.
Yep. Yeah. I'm not a. I'm obviously not impartial, but she is a rock star. She's got has guest conducted. In the last year, she's guest conducted in Florida, in Mississippi, in Maine, all over Virginia, North Carolina. She's a really big deal in her world. So
that's awesome. I didn't know that she specifically taught middle school. It's a special kind of crazy that you have to.
Yeah, it is. It is a special kind of. I'm not really. I don't really. To each his own. I'm not really signed up for the actual hell and heaven thing existing. But if they do, there's already a nameplate for any middle school teacher. Like in heaven, you could pretty much kill a guy, and you're still heading up rather than down. Yeah, you guys are crazy.
Yeah, it's nuts.
Yep.
It's something. Did she just have? She probably had a assessment or is about to have assessment.
She's gonna have it this weekend, allegedly. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see. It's so Fairfax County is closed on Monday for a teacher work day, and the rumor is that's new. That they're going to talk to everybody about to the teachers about online learning stuff. And Fairfax County is actually sitting on 19 unused snow days. So Fairfax County, with the spring break week thrown in, could close until April 20th and need to make up 1 day of school at the end.
Jeez.
So
Okay.
I think that they're going to be, and again, this isn't based on. There are rumors that it's going to be closed for a little while, but I think they're going to close the whole time. I think things are about to get very, very, very ugly. So we'll see. I hope I'm wrong.
This is why you do need to stay off Twitter, because I actually read that Fairfax had already made that call on Twitter last night. And
No,
I guess not.
They have most certainly not. So yeah, I'm being married to one of the teachers and having a kid in the system. Yeah, they have not. They're just no students for Monday. That's the only thing. Now, what you might have read is that all overnight trips and the trips going out to bands going out to Indianapolis for the Music for All, like that, those all got canceled like the day before they left. Which is really unfortunate. But
Yeah, we just lost our Hershey Park trip.
Yep. So yeah, spring trips, like everything is. Any overnight trips are, or any day trips to New York, because that's obviously an epicenter right now. Things are about to get ugly. So scary times.
Yeah, it's something. Well, we can take our mind off that.
There we go.
Yeah, we can. Speaking of assessment, we just did, we had our band one pretty early. It was all last week,
Right.
And I figured at some point I should probably, we should address who you are, and I would like to actually address my insecurity introducing people with a brief story about my assessment last week.
There you go.
So Dave Federley adjudicated one of my bands last week.
No kidding.
Yeah, well, he's in the area. He's got Baltimore Brass.
Sure.
And Baltimore Brass is wonderful. I mean, their service, I can email someone from the staff to say that a valve is beyond my ability to repair, and someone will be there within an hour, and then sometimes the instrument is back the next day.
Wow, that's crazy.
It's nuts. It's nuts. So my students are familiar with some of the staff, and so anyway, it's my younger of the bands. We have four, and there's I have the advanced one and the most beginner one, and the beginning group has just walked off stage. They've done okay, and so Dave walks into the room, and I said, "Oh, okay, long time no see. We're gonna do this," and he brings the scores up to the podium, and he puts them down, and we just kind of share a few awkward moments of silence looking at each other. And I look at my band, and they're not, burning the building down to the ground yet. So I look back at him, and as if to suggest, are we going to do this? And then he looks at me a few more quiet seconds, and then I look at my percussion, and I said, well, I think they're ready. And he asks, would you like to introduce me? And I thought, I have never been asked to start the clinic before. So I'm so I step on the podium, and I'm going on and on about, you've seen this man before. He's the reason why when John banged his euphonium against the doorway the other day, why it was back the next day. And I'm going on and on and on about Baltimore Brass and how wonderful they are. And then I hand him the floor, and he steps on the podium, and he says, and, also the Baltimore Symphony Orchestra for years and years and years, and the faculty of the University of Maryland. And I'm like, oh, man, I just completely ignored nearly all of his career talking about Baltimore Brass.
That's funny.
Yeah, so it was awkward. So that's my way of asking, do you want to introduce yourself?
Or if you just want to read the entire long-form bio on my website, that would be fine too. All 8 paragraphs, just to get it all in there. I can introduce myself for sure. My name is Andrew Hitz, and I currently teach tuba and euphonium as well as entrepreneurship at Shenandoah Conservatory. I was the tuba player and co-owner of a brass quintet called Boston Brass for 14 years, during that time I traveled to, I think it was 35 countries and 40-something states all over the world. And nowadays for performing, I sub with the National Symphony. I sub occasionally with the Baltimore Symphony. Yeah, I've gotten to do a lot of really, really cool stuff, and I have seen the band Phish 201 times in concert. So I think that's the highlights.
We're going to get to that, I think, if there's time.
There you go.
Both of your podcasts are excellent.
Oh, yeah, I host 2 podcasts, too. Yeah, the Brass Junkies, which I host with Lance LeDuc, and that is interviewing famous brass players and kind of like a behind-the-scenes peek at sometimes those are really ridiculous, and sometimes they're really serious, and sometimes they're both within 5 minutes in the same interview. It's basically just us kind of hanging out with famous brass players, and a lot of them were lucky enough to call friends, just again because of circumstances in the business, and so people get a little glimpse of us hanging out. And then the other one is called The Entrepreneurial Musician, of which I actually just launched, like last week, just launched a brand new website. It's the first time it's had its own website, which is tem.fm. But The Entrepreneurial Musician is not only a podcast, it's a blog. It's a TEM Coaching is a consulting and coaching service that I offer for individuals and ensembles and organizations. And I have a portfolio career now, as it's called, which is when I was in Boston Brass, 95 to, well, there was times it was 100% of my income, because that's like, that pays all the bills. We were on the road half the year, and when I first started, the other half of the year, I was just playing PlayStation and practicing a lot, and then as time grew, I got into other things. But now I have this portfolio career where I have 20 income streams, and some of those are very small, some of those are bigger, and they all total up to me making a full-time living as a musician. Yeah,
wow. Do you? I kind of want to talk about that a little bit. Like, I find that super interesting. Like, people, somewhat of a theme of people who have talked to me on this show, and people who I tend to be curious about and intrigued by are, sort of like have these different dimensions, like you can kind of turn them over and look at a different discipline or practice, but kind of like see how the drive that has informed, maybe their main bread and butter, like musical performance or teaching, for example, how that has sort of like naturally driven them towards things like maybe coaching or podcasting.
Mm-hmm.
In your case, what was like at what point did you feel like some of the stuff that you're doing that, I think for the average performer might be considered side work, but that you've sort of made a portfolio of, you've sort of like made diversified with a lot of these different skills and disciplines. Like, at what point let me try to start over actually with this question, because this is garbage how I'm asking this.
I can't relate at all. I always ask succinct questions. I never have to edit. Sometimes my questions are so bad. The TEM episode that I just released with Amanda Gookin, which I highly recommend. She is remarkable. She's amazing. But I said that I wanted to hear about which one of her projects. I don't remember which one it was. Maybe it was Public Quartet. I said, I want to hear about the Public Quartet, and then there was a pause because it absolutely seemed like I was about to ask a question, but then I just stopped talking, and then you could hear her smiling, and she said, and I'd like to tell you about it. And it was like, it was so awkward that I kept it. Like, I was like, no, that's not getting edited out. Like, we're keeping that in there. So anyway, and then she had an amazing answer, because she's, a monkey could interview that woman and it would be amazing and awesome. But anyway.
Yeah. Well, I guess what I'm saying is I get the impression that you do not think about coaching, podcasting, like blogging on, writing on your blog, and performing and teaching. I don't get the feeling that you really see these as different parts of yourself, or that you approach them differently than one another. They seem like they're all like sort of natural extensions of the same drive that at one point in your career like made you want to perform music.
Yeah, they absolutely are extensions of me, and I think about it as all is really the same thing. I mean, I can pinpoint like the moment when I decided to diversify, which was It was in January of 2010, so it was a decade ago, when I realized that I wasn't going to be able to be on the road forever. That was when I had been on the road for 10 years, and it was time for me for a number of reasons, to get off of the road. And I didn't get off for another 4 years, but I realized that I had, not from an ego standpoint, but from an ability to separate people from their money in exchange for me doing things for them, that I had a lot of, in my small corner of the world, I had a lot of name recognition as Andrew Hitz, the tuba player for Boston Brass, and I had significantly less name recognition as Andrew Hitz, and then without the qualifier. And so that was when I very intentionally decided, that's when I started andrewhitz.com. I bought the URL. I put up a website, which at first was just a blog. I then so I started the website. That's when I started my Twitter account, which was at Hitz Tuba at the time. I've since changed it to at Andrew Hitz, because I talk about a lot of things that have nothing to do with tuba. That was when I started my Facebook artist page. That's when I first decided to write the first Band Director's Guidebook, which was the Band Director's Guide to Everything Tuba, a collection of interviews with the experts. So I started doing all this stuff, and I didn't know how to do any of it. I mean, I really had no idea. And but I launched all of that stuff at the same time, and I just kind of learned by doing. And I read the book Crush It by Gary Vaynerchuk, which I still highly recommend to anybody. It's a bunch of it is dated in the sense that he talks about specific social media stuff, but the principles behind it are all completely rock solid, and about how you just have to keep showing up, and you have to keep doing. TEM I just released the 206th episode of that today. And the Brass Junkies is at like 134 or something like that, 133. And so you just got to keep showing up over and over and over again. But it turns out that you can't, at least I would have no idea how to start. I can't just declare to the world that I'm suddenly a music business consultant and then like wait for clients to come. You know, there has to be like a long digital paper trail, as I call it, of demonstrated passion and expertise and all of that stuff. And still, the vast majority of people will have like never even for half a second consider hiring me for a high hourly rate to do consulting for them. But some will, and then some do over and over again. But the point is that there was a conscious decision for me to diversify, and I still love playing the tuba. And I still do a lot of residencies where I'll do recitals and things like that. But I figured out that I had a lot of things that I loved other than just playing the tuba. And unless you get a steady gig, meaning, you know, and around here, that would mean the National Symphony, which Steve Dumaine is 2 years older than me. He's not going anywhere anytime soon. He's like about to turn 47. And he's a good friend of mine, but he's not going anywhere. And I'm too old for a military band, and I actually wasn't interested in doing one of those gigs anyways, even though I've soloed in front of a number of military. They're some of the best musicians in the world, but there's just not a lot of like tuba playing gigs that are in one place without traveling, and the traveling was amazing until it wasn't anymore. And as I always put it, the first time that you go to Macau, which is a fascinating place, it's like old Portuguese architecture right next to like Las Vegas, like looking casinos. It's way more interesting the first time than the third time that you go to Macau. So there's just like not really a value add there after you've been there a few times. And I just decided I want to get off the road. So I had to figure out how I was going to make money. And so I kind of cultivated some other passions along the way, and I've just been doing some of them for a decade now, others for less time, but I just keep showing up, and if it doesn't get traction, the beautiful thing about a portfolio career is you can bail on it. I mean, you know, and if something random kind of hits, you can put the pedal down on that more while you take it off of something else, or you can, you know, it's 100% up to me as to what I do in terms of where I put my time and energies, which is an exciting place to be.
Yeah, that's awesome. forgive if this tone comes across a certain way, but I guess I wanted to ask you, because as someone who is doing a lot, not quite for pay, but who's doing a lot with specifically technology, I wonder if you ever feel like these parts of your career that are not specifically musical performance ever feel like they're in the way or at odds with your identity as a musician, that core.
That's a great question. It doesn't. I will say that part of that is that I am incredibly spoiled in what I get to do and I play way less tuba than I used to. But that is, again, it's by choice, which is an empowering thing, and I think is much more gentle on the ego than if other factors, like if the marketplace or if an injury or something like that. When I get to play stuff, it was this past year they didn't hire a tuba, but 2 Decembers ago I got to play the Kennedy Center Honors Orchestra, and I played 2 Hamilton tunes with Lin-Manuel Miranda and 2 of the other cast members singing.
Awesome.
Yeah, I've gotten to play with Trey Anastasio from Phish with the National Symphony Orchestra. I've gotten to play with Alarm Will Sound and my second favorite band, Medeski Martin Wood, which was like a dream come true. I just soloed with the U.S. Army Blues, which was way out of my comfort zone, and it went really well. But that was a year of all hands on deck, attacking that. So I mean, I do really, really, really cool stuff. And when I get to go and do, I do a lot of residencies at universities. Well, I say a lot. That's actually not true. I used to do a lot, when I was with Boston Brass, but now I can kind of dial those up whenever I want to be honest, which is, I don't say that to brag. It's just, it's nice that I'm in a very rare position where I get to kind of call the shots, and it's not like I can call Deanna Swoboda, who's a dear friend of mine, and say, I'm coming to ASU for 2 days, and it's going to be the second week of October, and this is what you're paying me. But through Boston Brass, I had FaceTime with just about everybody out there, and so everybody knows me, and so I can dial up a lot of that stuff, and I tend to I try to do creative stuff within the recitals, and I don't like just an hour of tuba and piano. I'm just kind of bored by that, so I try and do some more creative stuff. So all of the rest of it is all I think is all kind of a part of it, and especially the music business stuff, I will say, because I know how hard people have worked to master their craft, and when I can, by helping them write a better pitch email, which seems minor but is most 10% of pitch emails are horrendous. 10% are remarkable in a good way, and then 80% of them are they're just there. They're not good, they're not bad, they're just, it's fine. When I can help a client write a remarkable pitch email that's human, that's to the point, that helps them to get their art noticed or helps them to get paid in exchange for making other people's lives better through their art, which then means that all of that hard work pays off. I completely get off on that. I mean, that's awesome. And people get really, really happy when you can help them to find their true fans or get noticed or, get a commission or whatever the case may be. And that's kind of the other side of the music, because college is pretty much, and some curriculums are changing. We just did an overhaul of ours at Shenandoah, which is really good. But college is pretty much built on figuring out how to make your playing 2% better. To get to a certain level and then just to keep making it 2% better. And they don't teach you any of the other crap. And it turns out that the difference between successful tuba players and non-successful tuba players is not necessarily playing 2% better than the other person. It's a lot of all the other stuff. And so I really enjoy when I get to help someone help themselves in that regard.
Yeah, they're still not really teaching those skills, I'm finding.
Yeah, you're right. I'm very lucky at Shenandoah. There are this is getting implemented in the fall. I mean, that's how new this is. But there are 2 classes that are now required for every music performance major on any instrument. And that is the first one is a class that I took over and overhauled, which is called the Performer in the 21st Century, which is all about like the traits that you need to succeed as a performer in the 21st century. And then the other one, which is like a full 3-credit class, is called the Entrepreneurial Musician, which I literally built from the ground up with like no supervision at all. And that is, we're going to be like using business model canvases to build an imaginary business / ensemble / whatever, and identify budgets and funding and all of this stuff. And it's going to be very hands-on. It's going to be group projects. And an extension of the Performer in the 21st Century class, but that's like a sequence of Performer is spring semester sophomore year, and then TEM class is, or as one of my students calls it, TEM podcast class, is fall semester junior year. So it's all within one calendar year. And that's like really exciting seeing students. I mean, I talk so much in class about and this isn't really said anywhere else within a university structure, and in a vast majority of them is never said anywhere, which is I'll just say it's a shame, so you don't have to mark this as explicit. It's that you need to define success for yourself, like period. You know, like that's it. And when you leave a high-profile brass quintet gig like I had, like the standard path, is to get a tenure track teaching job somewhere, or maybe get a symphony orchestra gig. I decided that I got out in January of 2014, and my son, who was my first and only kid at this point, was born in April of 2014. And I basically, my main job over the last 5 years, he's now in full day kindergarten, but was stay-at-home dad. And I went to I visited with Nicholas. I visited Smithsonian museums for 3 years in a row. We went about 100 times a year to Smithsonian museums when he, when he was 2, 3, 4 years old. We went. I mean, he can literally march you into any. He can march you into the national, the National Gallery of African Art, and can tell you where his favorite things are in that, So, which again, I don't say to brag. It was just like that's something that I valued, and I was told that by people like Sam Pilafian, my mentor, who passed away, and a bunch of people, like, your kid, all that they want is for you to be present. And I originally thought I was going to get off the road and I was going to freelance as much as possible in the DC area. And I then realized that I was going to, because childcare in daycare in the DC area is, as you know, it's outrageous. I mean, it's insane how expensive it is. And so I realized that I was going to have to hustle my ass off to get as many gigs as possible, to then pay a ton of money to not spend time with my kid.
Yep.
And that just didn't seem. If I had a job like my wife did, we would use daycare with no hesitation. But I was like, this doesn't make any sense. So then I was changing diapers all the time. I mean, I went from signing autographs all over the world to changing diapers, and that was my definition of success. And some people, I think that's like amazing, and then other people are like, I would never give up what you had for in a million years. I don't care how special fatherhood is or any of that. And they're not wrong, by the way, and I'm not right, and I'm not enlightened, and they're not enlightened. I mean, it's just to each his own, to each her own. And defining success for yourself, and then pursuing your portfolio career, and constantly recalibrating your definition of success and all of that stuff. It's like all at our fingertips, but we can think very linearly. Is that a word? Linearly?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
sure. Why not?
It is now. So I blew it. As long as you just say it like you mean it, then like some people will be like, that's not a word, but other people will be like, I don't think that's a word, but he sounded really sure of himself. So
I don't know enough of the science to refute it.
Yeah, exactly. So getting to teach them that stuff is really, really exciting to me.
I know a lot of people who are really good self-promoters who kind of promote their business. They almost like self-promote themselves into a corner with how pushy they can be.
Yep.
Like, how do you... I would love to believe that someone like you can explain that it's not obviously like you might not have a personality that would rub someone the wrong way, but it's got to be more than just personality, right?
Oh,
like,
but Robbie, I do. You work next to one of my dearest friends in the world, and if you just he was a groomsman at my wedding and vice versa, and if you said that in front of him about me, he would have fallen out of his chair. So yeah. Anyway, sorry. Continue.
I'm sure, but like there's got to be some strategies you've nailed down that are like maybe a little bit more fail-proof than others for how to not make every enemy in the world when you just simply want to tell people. Because I make the kind of like the opposite mistakes with, like I have this book that I wrote a couple years ago and was published, and like I hardly ever talk about it or mention it to people. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to be that person who is carrying a copy around with me in my bag.
So I'm gonna challenge you here. I was literally just talking to a TEM coaching client about this. It wasn't yesterday; it was the day before. But if your book is going to make my life better, if it's going to solve a problem for me, which could be entertainment, it could be helping me with technology, whatever. But if your book is going to make my life better, then you are being selfish by not telling me about it.
Fair. Very fair.
So now that there is a difference between someone. This is why everyone, by the way, has to have a website nowadays. Like you have to have a website because every day somebody or a number of somebodies, it's never 100, but it's never 0 either. Every day somebody stumbles on, clicks on my bio at andrewhitz.com. And they read my bio. That is someone who is voluntarily saying, "I want to learn more about you," which is the opposite of we're at some what we used to call in Boston Brass is forced fun, when we would have to go out with, like, in some big group, and it all just depends on who the hell you're sitting next to. And then, you're some young tuba player, and not in like a cool, like, can you share some stuff with me? But like you just spend the whole time. Let's say you're a composer and you spend the entire dinner just trying to get me to commission you when I'm trapped and I'm just trying to eat my damn steak.
Yep.
That's not what I'm talking about here. This is somebody who has clicked on my bio and is like, I want to learn more about this person. And so you cannot we all can think of people who do the social media thing, for example, who do it poorly, right? We can all think of people that are pushy, that do it poorly, but we can't then justify not telling people about the things that we do that could improve their lives, then because we just don't want to do it that poorly. And I always tell clients to trust your gut. If you feel like you're being pushy, like in a specific situation, if you feel like you're being pushy, then you then trust your gut, right? The whole like social media thing, the analogy that I like to use that Ariel Hyatt, who is the owner of Cyber PR, she's wonderful. I've interviewed her a couple of times on TEM. She likens social media to a cocktail party. And a cocktail party where, again, a bad version of social media is, you make the mistake of saying like, hey, what do you do? And I joked about this before. And I then read verbatim or from the top of my head, like all 8 paragraphs from my long form bio. And it's like, I really wasn't looking for you to list all 10 professional orchestras that you've played in front of or behind. Like, that's not what I was looking for, Right. Like no one is ever looking for that when you just meet someone. But when you also promote lots of other people, it means a lot more to someone if you tell someone that you know. If you were to tell Ben Denny, if he didn't know, he hears me talk enough. I doubt he listens to any of the podcasts. But actually, we don't even talk on the phone anymore. We just do GroupMe. But he heard me talk so much back in the day that he's probably like, no, I'm good. But if he didn't, if he didn't know about the Brass Junkies, and you told him, and you said, Ben, I found this podcast that I think it's amazing. Like, you're going to love this. You have to listen to this. That is a lot more effective than me telling Ben Denny, hey, I host a podcast that is amazing. Right? And the way to expand your audience is not to just keep the audience you have, but to have your audience tell other people about it as well. But we also can't be afraid to tell people about ourselves. And we have to, and some people say like the 80-20 rule works. Like if 80% of your feed is providing value to people, like promoting other people's stuff, and then 20% is you promoting what you put out. But if you write a blog post, if you are proud of this conversation that you and I are having, then tell people about it. You know, I mean, that's kind of I think that's the end of that. And we have to, Ben Folds, I'm assuming you know who Ben Folds is, right?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. I will clean this up so that, again, we don't need the explicit rating. But my favorite quote from a musician ever, certainly about the music business, is Ben said, if you're not interested in promoting yourself, then just stay in your bleeping basement. was what he said. Was if you write a bunch of songs and you think they're great, then ship them, as Seth Godin always says. You have to ship them. If you write songs and then they just stay in a notebook or stay on a hard drive, then I'm not going to know about it, right? There's no way that I can have an opinion on your songs. You can't tell Ben Denny about the Brass Junkies until you hear the damn Brass Junkies, right? I mean, that's very obvious. But the flip side of that, by the way, is that the criticism will come, like, period, because the only way for you to 100%, there'd be no chance of you thinking that the Brass Junkies sucks is if you never heard it, right? I mean, I have TEM and Brass Junkies. We have really good ratings. I have one-star review on TEM on Apple Podcasts. Like, somebody thought that TEM was so terrible that they literally took time to open up iTunes or to open up the Apple Podcast app to click leave a rating, and like they needed to warn others. That's how bad they thought that podcast was, because it's free. This isn't like don't waste your money. I mean, this is literally like, I need to warn you before you spend any time listening to this. This is 1 star. But there's also a bunch of 5 stars, and I'm a human. My eyes go straight to that 1 star, you know. And there's like, I don't know, 130 5-star, and there's like a few 4s. There's 1 3, and then there's 1 1. But
sorry about that.
Yeah, Robbie, I knew it was you. So that is going to come. You have to be prepared for it. But yeah, you need to sell yourself, because if I feel passionately, and I always give my version of the hard sell for TEM coaching is that if you think that this is a good fit for you, then you should hire me, because I'm going to help you. But if you don't think that I'm a good fit, then don't, right? Or if you think I'm a good fit and it's the wrong time, or it's like the right fit and the right time, but like the money isn't right for you, whatever. I mean, it has to check all the boxes. But then once you hire me, I'm going to provide value for you. And so I don't go screaming to every person that, I mean, when you and I have been interacting, but this also hasn't even popped into my mind. I mean, like, because if I thought about it this way all the time, then I would be like, hey, Robbie, do you want more listeners? I could tell you some stuff you could do to get more listeners. But I don't even think that way. I mean, if there's an organic opening, and then I say, well, here's what I can offer. And then if you decide again that it checks all of those boxes, then we work together. And if it's amazing, you're going to tell a whole bunch of people about it. And if it sucks, you're going to tell a whole bunch of people about it. And if it's just fine, you won't feel ripped off, but you're not going to tell anybody about it, and it won't really grow. And so, then you just try and wow the hell out of the people with your book or with your coaching, or with your podcast, or with your e-course, or with your brass quintet, whatever. And if you do exceed their expectations, then they're going to do the marketing for you. The definition that Seth Godin always uses of remarkable is worth remarking about. And the fact is that most podcasts aren't that remarkable, right? Amanda, I just edited this TEM 206 today, and Amanda joked that she's been talking about, she's been thinking for a year about starting a podcast, and, even though like everyone and their aunt has a podcast, right? And I told her then in response to that was like, the world is not lacking. The world does not need another podcast, but as I've already said like twice, to you into this mic, like she is remarkable. She's an amazing woman. She's an amazing artist. Like the world does need someone with that kind of passion and that kind of that. She makes remarkable art and she can talk about it and can fire up anybody. So like the world actually does need that, and if she had a podcast, I guarantee you I would listen to it, but I guarantee you that I would be recommending that to people because I think that she's amazing. So yeah, you can market to yourself. You can market yourself. Trust your gut, but also get over the whole like, I don't want to market because I don't want to do it wrong. Because also, like anything else, what is your primary instrument?
Percussion.
So the first time that you tried to play with 4 mallets, you sucked. Right? I mean, I wasn't there, but it and I'm not saying that it didn't go better than the first time I would have tried that. I'm not saying it wouldn't have gone worse. Mark Demolakis, the principal percussionist in the Cleveland Orchestra, he and I have been friends for decades. We were in youth orchestra together. The first time he played the timpani, it didn't go well, right? I mean, like, it doesn't matter who the hell you are. It's the same thing with marketing, right? Where you can't expect to be great at marketing in terms of what channels you do it in, of the words you use or don't use, or copy as it's called. I mean, all that stuff. And it doesn't mean that if you have common sense and self-awareness that you will be terrible at it. But if you're not terrible at marketing yourself compared to how you are a year and a half into it with like paying attention and getting feedback and, and using data and all that, then something is terribly wrong. Right? But you have to start somewhere. Your first website is going to not be very good compared to the third iteration. Your first interview is not going to be very good compared to your 200th interview, et cetera. But you have to start.
Yeah, right on. I'm going to just awkwardly segue all of that into something that you said.
Great.
Which is you were talking about podcasts that are bad and that many of them are. And I just have to ask you this, and this is coming from the perspective of a percussionist who teaches band. I love the Brass Junkies. I learn stuff from it every time I listen to it, and it's a great time. You've got to be able to tell me where are the podcasts about other instruments that don't suck, because like, when I listen to any podcast that's like, this is the, I'm going to try not to be too specific because there's so few out there that everyone's going to know what I'm talking about. But let's just say like,
sure.
This is the clarinet podcast, not a real example. When I listen to these other shows, I feel like the air is sucked out of my car as I'm driving down the highway.
So, it's Lance, my co-host, Lance LeDuc, who is one of the most brilliant business minds I've ever met, who is one of the best euphonium players in the world. If you don't know what a euphonium is, you can Google it. Even though Gmail thinks that the word euphonium is misspelled, which is hilarious to me. It is always underlined in any email, which is just funny. But it gets no respect. So, but the Lance and I decided that the nexus for the Brass Junkies, we both knew that we wanted to get out of Boston Brass. We both knew that we wanted to keep working together. We tried to figure out what that was going to look like. And what we figured out was, the business question is, what is your unfair advantage? And our unfair advantage was that we have access, again, through circumstance and through our careers, we have access to quote-unquote famous brass players. And when I say famous brass players, when Joe Alessi, who's a good friend of mine, who's the principal trombone in the New York Philharmonic, when he goes to the grocery store, he doesn't have any problems getting back to the milk section without people stopping him for an autograph. Like, no one knows who the hell he is in a Giant or a Safeway. So but within the brass circles, he's super famous. He's one of the most famous trombone players to ever live. And again, when I text Joe, which is usually something about how his favorite baseball team, the New York Yankees, suck, and he usually responds with something that's not all that nice about my favorite baseball team, the Boston Red Sox, that he texts me back, right? I have the number, we have a relationship. And so Lance and I were like, we should give people we have had the privilege of just being able to, shoot the you-know-what with Joe and, have some beers or a cigar or whatever and just like hang out, and we joke around, and sometimes we talk about music, other times we talk about baseball and egg each other on, whatever, we talk about anything. And so we realized that if we gave people an inside look into that was something that didn't exist in the world, and that there really was no outlet for Joe Alessi, at least how we were going to do it, for people to kind of get the behind-the-scenes look at Joe Alessi and to get to know him as like a person and not somebody on stage. Or there were a lot of interviews of and I find a lot of value in these, by the way. There's no criticism here, but there's a lot of interviews with Joe Alessi talking about technique and talking about equipment and talking about all that stuff. And not that we never touch on that stuff, but we just wanted to hang out and let the conversation go wherever it goes. It's like if you and me were having dinner, it's not like I would send you talking points or you'd send me talking points, right? I mean, we would just kind of start talking. We might talk politics or not. We might talk sports or not. We might talk about teaching band or not. I mean, it just goes where it goes. And so that was kind of the nexus for the Brass Junkies. And I guarantee you, well, this is actually a funny story. Sean Roish, who is the former trombone player for, I almost said Meridian, which is not the group, and they're amazing. Presidio Brass. He decided to get off the road for kids and a bunch of stuff a number of years ago, but he's a friend of ours, and he actually posted on Facebook, he posted that he was using like a log splitter to chop some wood, and that he was catching up on the Brass Junkies, and he tagged Lance and I, and he talked about how Wes Funderburk and Tom Gibson, who are two of my trombone buddies, that interview was hilarious because those guys are very, very, very funny, and about how great it was, and he was recommending the podcast to other people, etc. And somebody, some old dude who I didn't know, who had 12 mutual friends, but he then commented under it. I pointed out old not to be ageist, but I'm not sure if he understands how tagging works, because he then replied and he said, "Oh, I love log splitters, whatever," and then he said something to the effect of, "But But that podcast is can be really annoying. The hosts laugh way too much." So, and then of course I'm tagged on this. So I then see this. So then, because I'm basically 12 years old with a credit card, I then of course put the laughing reaction on Facebook to the guy's criticism of me laughing too much. And then I text Lance, and then Lance goes, and so then there's two reactions, which are both of us laughing, So, so there are some people who really think it's a missed opportunity if we're talking to Pat Sheridan, they want to hear him talk about how to play in the high register, and that's it. There are some people who think that the Brass Junkies could be more serious. There are some people that wish there was never any cursing. There are some people that wish that we cursed more because they know us and know that we're kind of holding back a little bit. Some people wish they were longer. Some people wish they were shorter. And that's very real, right? Some people have a 20-minute commute and they would love just a quick blast that they can listen to the whole thing. Other people want it to be 2.5 hours if it can be 2.5 hours. But you can't please everybody. So you just got to do your thing. And we have the same running inside joke at the end of every single episode, which has been going on for 5 years. And some people find that absolutely hilarious, and I'm sure other people skip it. But the point is, you just got to make your thing, and you just got to kind of put it out into the world. And so some people might enjoy a really dry clarinet podcast where if Lance and I were hosting, they would just be like, oh, dear Lord, I just want to hear about reeds. That's it. I just want to hear about, what do you do on assessment day when your best clarinet player comes to you and has a reed problem, whatever. If there's some sort of a trick or, something that you learn over the years, and that's very valuable. But first of all, Lance and I obviously don't have that information, but we're also neither one of us is big equipment people. So even though we each have our own line of Parker Mouthpieces, who's a sponsor, but we even joke about the fact that we're like, yeah, they're awesome, but I don't know why. I can't get into the specs, and so why the hell would you even want me to talk about the specs when I could read them to you, but I don't know. I don't know, right? Somebody who knows a lot about the specs could do a deep dive there. But I do think that some people are afraid to let their personality shine through, and that doesn't mean that you have to be as loose as Lance and I are. I mean, most people listening to this have probably never heard it. We start every episode by me introducing myself and then introducing Lance and then asking him how he's doing, and it's always, and the running joke is that sometimes I literally cut him off and say, yeah, I don't care, and then we keep on talking. It's 8 seconds into the call, and then other times Lance is just saying ridiculous things right away. But that's him and I. I mean, we have an hour-long Pedal Note Media business call every week with our partner, Will Houchin, and the three of us. And I mean, we can be in the middle of a serious business call where we're making some kind of major decisions, and then we can just go full jackass for 5 minutes. Where it just goes completely off the rails, and then it just comes right back. But that's kind of how we operate. That's how we hang out. That's how we rehearse. That's how we do everything. So that's what the podcast should look like, in my opinion, or else it's going to feel forced. If you're not funny that often, don't try to be funny on your podcast. If you're not super dry, then don't try to be super dry on your podcast. Just be, and you're very natural at this. You need to be Robbie. Some people aren't going to like that. Some people are going to love it. A bunch of people in the middle, but you got to be Robbie, or else basically no one's going to love it. If you try and go to the fictitious middle ground, then nobody's happy. Nobody does your marketing for you. Your audience doesn't expand. And then you kind of wonder why you're not getting traction.
So in conclusion, there's no Woodwind Junkies podcast that you know of.
I don't think so. I don't think that there is. What's funny is that I don't really listen to, and I've heard some episodes of the Brass Chats with the Monster Oil guys. I've heard a couple of those, and Jim Pandolfi, who's a good friend who we interviewed. He's hilarious. The bonus episode of the Pandolfi with Jim Pandolfi is one of my favorite moments in all of Brass Junkies history, because Jim is legally blind, and I wasn't thinking, and I texted him, and he left me a voicemail about how calling me some very, very spicy words about talking about blind people and text messages, and how that's not really the best way to get in touch with them. So yeah, it was funny, and so I actually played the voicemail but with him on the phone. He was howling at his own humor. But anyway, he was on the Brass Chats, and he talked all about he talked shop, and it was amazing. I mean, it was really, really granular, talking about riding above the sound, and it was resonance and all this stuff. It affected my teaching. But in general, I don't really seek out those kind of podcasts, just for me. I mean, in terms of in the music realm, not everything I listen to is funny. I mean, I have the third one I'm going to start, I think, next month, but I've listened to the unabridged audiobooks of the first 2 volumes of of Solzhenitsyn's Gulag Archipelago, which is that is some heavy reading. I've like listened to like 60 hours of like the Russian internment camp history. I mean, it's like, so it doesn't have to all be funny, because that book is not funny. But the music thing though is like, I don't know. I spend so much, for me, I spend so much time talking so seriously about it, like in school and whatnot, that for me, I would rather listen to, not myself, but if you and Lance hosted the Brass Junkies, I bet I would listen to that podcast. Just because that's kind of more my speed, which is probably why it really resonates with some people, because that's kind of who I am. I mean, I just rather hear. We love in the bonus episodes asking people like the craziest thing, like in terms of failure that's ever happened on stage, like, which is just, that's funny to me. Whereas some people, that's a total waste of an opportunity when you've got some amazing trumpet player and you're asking them about like stage failures, and but yeah, that's our speed. So you have to do you. That's really, really, really important, because we all get bombarded with content now, and boy, is it easy to see through it when somebody is just kind of BSing. And they could even be BSing themselves, right? They could just be trying to sound very scholarly when they're not. Or scholarly in a way that they're not. I don't think that being scholarly is binary, which I just totally made it sound like it is. It's not. But you understand what I'm saying. Just when you're trying to act like somebody other than yourself. If you've ever hired anybody for, in your department at school, and you've had people come and interview, there's always a couple of people, and they're not doing this maliciously, but you can spot them from a mile away when they're kind of acting like they think that you want them to act, and then that doesn't work out in job interviews, in dating, or in podcasts. It just doesn't, because you could get a second date, and then guess what? You either have to act like that person you were pretending to be, or else it's they're going to be like, who is this guy? This is not the guy I went out to dinner with last week. This is like a new dude, and it's not a good thing. It's the same thing with podcasts or writing books or anything else you put out in the world.
All right, I gotta ask you this. Another great segue. Tools. I want to talk about tools. You strike me as the kind of person who is not afraid to embrace technology when it will serve a goal. Are there tools that you feel like you're particularly enthusiastic about right now, things that are helping you get to the next level as a musician, or promoting yourself?
There are a number of different ways to go. One which is not very high tech, but that I swear by as a tool that makes me a better musician and a better human and a better teacher is Audible. I have an Audible Pro account, which gets me 1 credit for an audiobook every month, and it obviously takes me a while to slog through a volume of the Gulag Archipelago, but listening to music business books, for example, listening to Seth Godin's most recent book, which is called This Is Marketing, which basically the whole premise of that book is that absolutely everything is marketing. Like your product is marketing, your teaching is marketing, who you teach, what you teach them, how you set it up. I mean, all the above, everything's marketing. So listening to books, I don't remember who said it, but I heard a few years ago that basically any subject in the world, that if you read 2 books on that subject, then you will know more than 98% of the world about that thing. Which is true, right? I mean, you're certainly not going to know more about conducting than you will if I just read 2 books on it, and 2 good books, because you've probably read those books and you do it, but you're in that 2%. But I'm going to know a hell of a lot more about it than your neighbor. Likewise, one of your neighbors who reads 2 books on conducting is going to know way more than a neighbor who doesn't, has never read any books. So I try to remain teachable at all times. We've both experienced this, whether it's middle school kids or college kids or colleagues, that every once in a while I will get a student who is a sponge that is already completely full of liquid, and there's no room for anything else. And they don't say these words, but they're like, yeah, I don't need. I'm good. I'm full. I got it. I try to never be a completely full sponge. Am I successful? No, not all the time. That's for sure. But I try to never be a completely full sponge, and consuming books, whether through reading. I have a commute to school. While I'm vacuuming the house, I'm usually listening to either a podcast or an audiobook. So that's one tool, which is it's kind of crazy if you think not too long ago, if I was messing with audiobooks. Like it would be they'd be CDs, it wasn't that long ago. And now it's like it syncs across all devices and I can listen on my phone, which is an Android, and then that can go to my iPad. And then, I can use it on Sonos. It's amazing how it's all syncs, and it just makes things very easy. Another answer, for technology or for a tool, that I use is I use Slack a lot. I don't know if you use Slack for anything.
The Ellicott Mills Music Department is in love with Slack.
I'm not surprised by that. That's that feels like a very Ben Denny tool. So it's very practical. That is how I communicate with my two partners at Pedal Note Media. That is how, and that's like the workflow for the episode graphics, and for our Will Houchin also produces the Brass Junkies, so he puts together all the episodes. That's where they get posted. That's where we have brainstorms. That's where everything is run through Slack. And I'm also on the board of directors of a charity called the Mockingbird Foundation, which our mission is to improve access to music education for children in America. And I'm proud to say we just had our 24th round of grants. We just passed a total of $1.6 million that we've given out, which is awesome. It's good. But we use Slack there. And so it's just a place to be able to organize, and it helps with workflow. And Slack is awesome. And it feels better to me than email. Email, I put it this way, I don't ever get PR professionals sending me crappy pitches for having their clients on TEM on Slack.
Yeah.
Those all come to email. To go totally off the rails here, and then I'll circle back in just a second. You talk about marketing the wrong way. I get pitch emails from PR firms, like people who are paying money to these people to do their marketing for them. And the whole thing is like, hey, dear, I've even had it say Dear Tom, because they didn't change the damn name from the other music podcast that they were pitching. It basically could say, Dear Andrew, I did a Google search of music business podcasts, and yours was on the first however many pages. And so it would be good for me if I could get my client on your show, because she is paying me to get her on shows. So, and here is a press release, which is just copy and pasted below. Let me know. And they said me, my, I like 9 times. And there's no mention of TEM. There's no mention of who my audience is. There's no acknowledgement, even a minor one, that this person has even heard my damn podcast, which I don't care if you've heard my podcast. It's not an ego thing. It's are you actually telling me that your client is going to be a good fit for my audience and what I'm trying to put into the world, right? Because I don't care if you're a brass player, if you are very academic and very dry and you want to talk all about period instruments and natural horns, then like that's not a great fit for the Brass Junkies,
Yep.
right? I mean, it checks the boxes, but that's not like, our listeners would be like, what, did somebody lose a bet? Like, what is happening here, And it sounds like I'm saying that with judgment. I'm not. That's just not my thing. Some people can't stand listening to Phish for 201 seconds. I've gone to Canada to see them. I've seen them from Washington State to the California-Mexico border to southern Florida to Presque Isle, Maine. All 4 corners of the country, and I'm obsessed with them. But yeah, you have to send a pitch that actually resonates with the person that you're trying to pitch. And the only thing that I'm worried about, by the way, when I'm booking a guest is my audience going to get value out of this? That's the whole thing. Don't offer me a spot on your podcast in exchange for one on mine. Because I used to get a lot of those, and maybe I just kind of went through them, but I started saying no, because if the only thing, and yes, it is entrepreneurial if you host a podcast, but if like really the only thing you do is host a podcast, at some point I can't have like 10 podcast hosts on my show over a 30 episode span, because then it's obvious that I'm just kind of trading appearances, which is like, that's good for me because I'm on their podcast. It's not good for my audience.
It's like the follow me back Twitter idea. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I follow you, you follow me.
Yes.
People who have like 5,000
yes.
followers and follow
Right.
5,000 people.
Yep, and that's fine. Some people do really like to get followed back, whatever. But like, certainly don't ask me to follow you back. I'm gonna follow you back if you provide value, right? I followed you back before I knew that you taught with Ben, and yeah, it was just like I didn't take like a week to decide. I don't remember. I just clicked, and I don't remember whether you followed me first or I followed you first, whichever. But I decided, like, no, I'm going to follow this person because this feed is interesting to me. And that was the end of the discussion. Now, I'm not saying that if you were, like, an important tuba player that I wouldn't follow you back no matter what. I'm not saying that you never do that, but when I don't know who you are, and I didn't until I knew who you were, I didn't know who you were, and vice versa, right? Before you knew who I was, you had no clue who I was. Yeah, you're just trying to populate your feed with stuff that is interesting to you. And for me to be like, it'd be good if you, followed me, and I hope you find it interesting. Like, that's not how the world works, right? That's just not how the world works. So, the other tool that which is, I'm sure, one that you've had like a lot of guests, if they're teachers, talk about, is Tonal Energy Tuner, which just the power that thing has, even just the ability to record something and then speed it up to 200% or slow it down to 50% without changing the speed. Rex Martin had a reel-to-reel recorder in his office that he got from Arnold Jacobs back when, this was 25 years ago, when I was at Northwestern. And he would occasionally record something and then slow it down to half speed. And so it would then be down an octave, because obviously you couldn't, the pitch would change. And half speed would be down the octave, but then you could hear very slowly exactly what was going on in Fountains of Rome. And the fact that we can now do that, and the fact that students can get it, basically everyone's laboratory that is their practice room is now completely tricked out with, I used Tonal Energy Tuner, this was probably 4 or 5 years ago now, but relatively recently, since I'm old. Someone who's like 19 is like, that was not recently, dude. I was 14 years old. But when you're 44, it's like, I was like sometime recent, that I started to record myself playing like 4-beat crescendos. And I was using Tonal Energy Tuner, and I was looking for like the perfect the perfect cone, sideways cone for a crescendo. And I realized that in general that it was very hard for me to get an absolutely perfect crescendo across all 4 of those beats, and that I would tend to have more crescendo in the 4th quarter note of that whole note than I did in the 3rd quarter note. And not by not double, but that it was just a little bit or I would come in a little too hot and it would be a little bit, and I worked at it, and with the help of the visual aid and of listening, and I was able to get like a 4-beat crescendo that was exactly, it was like a MIDI file in terms of getting louder, but with hopefully a better with a better tone. Yeah.
Tuning drones are like a religion at Ellicott Mills Middle School, so you're preaching to the choir here.
That's great.
Because you can do just intonation, And
Yes.
my
I
goodness.
do it all the time.
Oh yeah, you can record. I mean, you can record a whole note concert B flat scale where every note is resonating exactly the way you want, and you can like throw that on your band website
Yep.
and tell everyone to go practice to it. And it's like,
You should do that. And if you throw some groove stuff on top of that,
the trap hip hop beats in GarageBand
Yep.
pair excellently with all of these tuning drones.
I saw back in the day. I saw the Empire Brass rehearse every day for 4 weeks at a time for a couple of summers, and they would rehearse Gabrielli with they had a drum machine which was literally a big like machine that they brought with a guitar amp, and they would be blasting hip hop beats over Gabrielli, and then they would take the drum machine away, and it was magic. I mean, it was just like everything was exactly lined up. And so it was this antiphonal Italian church music that was like just moving in lockstep with each other. And it was amazing. I mean, that's as high quality as chamber music like that exists in the world, was right there like with that. And they were blasting hip hop music or hip hop beats at the time, in spite of having to lug heavy equipment. It was like a 5-minute walk from the car, and they're playing. It was like a rock band who was like, doing a load in, at a gig. Yep.
It's amazing to me how many musical styles there is a backbeat inside of that predates the backbeat.
Yep.
Yeah, it's inside. My favorite lately is the trap beat because of all the hi-hat action that's happening. It's like, it's a lot of these grooves are like halftime. So for some reason I feel like the snare on the 3 of every measure instead of the 2 and the 4. Somehow I like to believe that that's stretching your feeling of sustaining a tone
right
to a longer, further away finish line. But then you got so much hi-hat activity, you're subdividing. I love it. I love a good groove.
Yeah, good stuff.
Great metronome too. What percussionist speaking here? You can like make a metronome with there's like a little sequencer built into it where I can, for all those passages that go like the beat is split into 4 for 2 measures or 2 beats, and then 5 for another. You can make a little click that goes and just have that. Turn that into an MP3. Email it to a private student. Done.
Yeah, it's powerful. It's powerful. And last tool is the Better Ears app, which is really good. That was there's chord recognition and scale recognition and intervals and melodic dictation and all that stuff. And the first time that I produced a recording session, I called Sam Pilafian and was like, "What do I need to do?" And then he said, or I texted him, and he said, "I'll call you back in 5 minutes." And I knew what that meant. And so I was sitting at my computer, and I just started like typing like mad. There's a TEM episode called Sam Pilafian on Producing, which was all of my notes from that call. One of the things he told me was to like get the Better Ears app and to just start like, trying to walk in and to listen to the best sounding recordings that I know of, so that I could walk in with like the highest standards possible. And then just make the musicians, get to that level, and they'll always be happy. So, Better Ears and Slack and Tonal Energy Tuner and Audible.
Is the icon an orange shell?
Yes, it is.
I've never heard of this before. This is cool. I'm learning a new thing.
Yep, it's good.
Okay, awesome. I'll put that in the show notes. Yeah, wow, awesome. So cool. What is it like would you classify this as a theory?
Yes. Yep, theory and theory and ear training. Yep, yeah, exactly. I'm opening it up right now. Better Ears, the ear training app is what it's called. It's got interval recognition, scale recognition, chord progressions, pitch recognition, melodic dictation, tempo recognition, key signature recognition, music reading, interval music reading, scale music reading. And then there's beginner, easy, medium, and Profi, Profi, Profi. I don't know. That's a level like this app kicks my ass. I have a really good ear, and I've never, whatever that expert level is like, I got to imagine that's Sam Pilafian once told a story when he was that he was drinking late at night with Michael Tilson Thomas and Leonard Bernstein, and that the two of them were literally like basically like one of them would sit on the piano and then the other one was identifying by ear at once like which notes were sounding and which weren't. Like that they were like identifying like, you know, like 22 note cluster chords. And seeing who could get all 22 rather than just 21 of them. So so it's like I think the expert level on that would be like that, which is above my pay grade.
Yeah, wow.
Oh.
Who's the kid on YouTube whose dad does that with him?
I don't know.
Have you seen this? I'll have to send this to you and link it in the show notes. He's probably not a kid anymore because these videos were getting passed around some musical circles a couple years back, but they're in a studio and the dad plays one of these giant cluster chords and the kid is like, you know, A flat, C, D, G sharp. You know, he just sings he says the whole cluster and then he goes, you know, then he sings it out loud.
Wow. Jeez.
You know, he goes through the whole thing. And then there's a whole YouTube video about how he trained him from birth to do that by playing him musical recordings for half an hour a day. I have a 2-month-old right now, and I'm just thinking to myself, like, I guess I got to get on that.
My kid has grown up in a band room. You know, my wife, as we were talking about, is a middle school band director, but yeah, we're not pushing him. So
no.
yeah, not pushing him.
Yeah, not at all. Yeah. All right, cool. So I learned a new app. That's exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do we count that? I told you we'd do an app of the week. Do we count that, or do you have did you think about something specific, or is?
No, those were I was gonna. That's the list. Yeah, I was gonna choose from one of those. So yeah, you could make the better ears the app of the week.
Yeah, sounds good. I have to. It's the rules of my show that I have to do one too. I actually just posted a review on my blog last night of an app I've been beta testing for the past month called StaffPad. Are you familiar with this one?
I'm not.
This is an app that has been on Windows Surface tablets for the past 3 or 4 years and just came out for the iPad.
Okay.
It is a handwriting recognition notation editor where you, with the Apple Pencil, you scribble on a staff and then it converts it into professional music notation.
Wow.
And
cool.
That sounds as impressive as it is, but also in the same way you might think, okay, but does it work 100%? Yeah, there are some issues, but I was on leave for the birth of my 2-month-old for the first of the 2 months that I was really working with this, and I just got to say, for a band director who's not, I'm not writing a symphony. I'm like reconstructing a missing flute part from the band library.
Sure.
Stuff like this where I'm just on my free time holding a kid in one arm and then lugging the mobile iPad from room to room, like being able to just scribble a couple notes here and there on an iPad without using one of these hefty score editors like Sibelius or Finale was really, really kind of cool. I think it's going to stick for me. I'm going to keep using it for really basic stuff.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, that's great. It's I think that there's an opening. Always thinking about the business angle that Leo Laporte, who's one of my favorite technology commentators, and I listen to This Week in Google with him, and he's built this podcasting empire. But I once heard him on his call-in radio show, which is a national thing where people call in with technology problems, and somebody was complaining about how complicated Photoshop is to use. And this was a few years ago. This was before there was the proliferation of easy to use photo editing apps. And his response, which was polite, was that Photoshop is supposed to be difficult to use because it's literally the most powerful photo editor in the world. So that's not intended for some, tuba player like me to just maybe lighten just a little bit quickly a shot of my kid at a museum,
Right.
And so, Sibelius and Finale are really, really, really powerful, but you don't need that for the use case that you were just talking about. And you may never need that. And so I think that, when there's an ease of use for someone like you, then, and I bet you probably know how to use one of those other programs also, but especially, say, a young you who hasn't learned how to use that yet as a brand new director, and maybe you don't ever have to unless you really get into needing all those tools. I think there's a niche that can be filled by that product.
Yeah, totally. That's the way I'm feeling.
Yep.
Are you listening to anything good lately?
In terms of recordings?
It's funny. I rebooted this whole show and did some new album artwork and retitled it. And I'm with the idea that there would be some consistent segments. And one of them is Album of the Week. And it's like every passing week that I exist, I'm finding myself still holding to this idea that an album can be like a perfectly conceived work, something that is enjoyed from start to finish. Yet at the same time, I'm also finding myself doing a lot of music listening that is, I guess, appropriately like less decentralized, grabbing a song here and there. And
yep.
So do you have an album you've been listening to lately, or even just a song or an idea, a musical idea that is running around in your head that serves the purpose of this segment?
Yeah, and I will first say that and I love albums. I was raised on albums, on Led Zeppelin albums and Beatles albums and Guns N' Roses albums and Empire Brass albums and all of the above. But circling back to a while ago in this conversation, in the effort of being remarkable. Most middle school music program fundraisers are not remarkable because they're providing the same stuff that the other towns around you are, and if it gets the job done, like I don't have an opinion on that, but you're not gonna blow the bank away either when it's not remarkable. The concept of an album is not necessarily that remarkable anymore, and there are ways to make albums remarkable, like Beyonce releasing one literally in the middle of the night when Beyonce super fans, like people that literally have the word Beyonce in their Twitter handle, like wake up and have a meltdown because there's an hour's worth of brand new Beyonce music in their life, and it's like 6 a.m. and they can't, they drop their phone, they're so excited. That's remarkable. How the hell did she keep that quiet for that long, Like for everybody. I mean, all it takes is one person looking to be a hero and get the clicks, and like nobody did it, But there are more remarkable ways now than releasing albums. That being said, I still love me a good album. Anyway, some of the albums that I've been really digging on recently in terms of the classical world is the Andrus Nelson's Boston Symphony, Shostakovich Symphony recordings, which are all from within the last 5 years. And if you haven't heard any of those, they are absolutely stellar. Like that orchestra sounds as good as it has sounded in a long time. I had seen the Boston Symphony before I graduated from high school. I grew up outside of Boston. My parents had a house, still have a house that's near Tanglewood, and I studied at Tanglewood for 4 summers. I had seen the Boston Symphony somewhere north of 200 times before I went to college. And that orchestra sounds amazing right now. And those recordings are really, really, really special. I don't know if you've ever heard of the service Idagio, which is one of the classical streaming services.
Yeah, I'm a proud subscriber.
Oh, there you go. So I am a subscriber as well, and there are times when I don't listen to it all that much, but I have made and there are also times when I listen to it a lot. I have made an intentional decision that I am keeping that $10 a month fee going, even if I don't use it for a month or a month and a half at a time. Even with all of the music on YouTube, and I am a subscriber on Spotify, and a lot of it's there, but for me, it's a discovery engine where their new featured album releases, that's the first thing I go to every time, and I will see that there is a new recording from some orchestra in Germany that I've never heard of, and I Google it, and it turns out it's an amazing orchestra because there's a lot of them over there, of Shostakovich 8, and then I listen to it, and I learn new conductors, and I also learn some new, I heard a couple of songs. There was an album of Nadia Boulanger and her sister, who I had never heard of her sister, and I'm not remembering the name right now, but her sister died when she was 21, but she wrote a couple of songs, and this was an entire album of the Boulanger sisters writing songs, and a couple of them I think would be really good for the tuba. And I'm always trying to find new recital rep, and I'm also trying to not have all of my recital rep be old dead white dudes. That's something that's important to me. And a bunch of people just went, hell yeah. And then a bunch of people, or some people, just rolled their eyes, and like, that's fine, but that's important to me. And so, that checks the box. And so like, I use that service to discover new albums. And I can't tell you the name of that, although it was in the new releases within the last couple of weeks.
I'm going to have you send me the URL.
Yeah,
so
I can do that.
Put that in the notes. Yeah.
Yep, I can do that.
I had exactly the same mental inner dialogue about Adagio the other day, because I am also like, I'll go months without using it. And it's the kind of thing where, I'm having a private lesson with a student, and I'm like, all right, have you ever listened to this snare drum excerpt? And we're doing, what are we doing? It's a little bit past my bedtime with a 2-month-old. What's the most famous snare drum excerpt?
Are you talking about? What?
I can't remember.
Are you talking about Bolero? That's not Bolero.
No, that actually is the most famous snare drum excerpt.
I was like, but that's not what she's saying. Anyway. Well, I just to give you a second, I just put the link of the songs by Lily and Nadia Boulanger into the show notes. It's with Nicholas Fan, who's a tenor, and Myra Huang, who is a pianist. So, but yeah, there's some beautiful stuff there.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to checking that out.
Yeah.
The third movement of Scheherazade has a very famous snare drum excerpt.
Of course. Sorry, I didn't get that from your singing. It wasn't you, it was me, but yes.
Well, and you know what? You wouldn't get it listening to 20 different recordings on Adagio either, because apparently no one can play that excerpt very well. is what I have learned, because I'm like booting up Adagio. I'm like, oh man, I'm not subscribed right now. So I real quick type in, stick my, I guess it's my face now. I shove my phone next to my face and I authorize, and then it's like, yeah, okay, we can seriously just filter this by year, by, orchestra, by director.
I love that you can do that, or by most popular, most recent. Yeah, I really like that.
Yeah, and we're just listening to recording after recording, and I'm like, man, how does anybody get a professional orchestra job if this is what everyone sounds like? Like, I don't... I'm like, see, it's hard. It's kind of hard to do. So
I don't know if there's a recent one from Cleveland Orchestra, but if you don't like that one, let me know, and I'll text my friend Mark and tell him that you think he sucks. So,
please.
It'd be good for him. Everybody tells him how amazing he is because he's one of the best percussionists in the world. So every once in a while, you got to, that's what friends are for. You got to knock him down a peg. Like, it's this Robbie dude. He's not impressed. I just wanted you to know. I hope the wife and kid are well.
Amazing. But no, I'm legitimately going to look that up now. But yeah, seriously great service. Do you ever do the Berlin has that video? It's kind of like a Netflix, but it's got their whole backlog of recent videos of the orchestra.
I'm sorry, who was that? Say it again.
Digital concert hall.
I have basically never used that. I don't really know why. I just and the idea fascinates me, and I get the catalog, and I'm like, holy crap! And I think if I could watch some of the live stuff with my wife, then I would do it. But she's never free at that time. I mean, because we have a 5-year-old, and so. It's like a concert that starts at 2 p.m. on a Saturday. Like, we are not sitting on the couch to watch Scheherazade.
But it's on demand is the thing.
It is on demand. I think that if I was watching it live, it would be different, because if I scheduled around it, I think it would be something. But yeah, I've never subscribed. Now, Pat Sheridan, my good friend, he swears by it. He watches it all the time. So yeah, I haven't really done that much, but I don't tend to watch a lot of video of music. Every once in a while I will, I'll delve into YouTube, but even when I do, I tend to not watch that much. I listen more than I watch, which is also probably part of it. If they had, which is funny because you could just ignore it, but if they had an app that was just the audio, I would probably listen. I would probably use that.
They do actually. So you just
there you go.
It works. It's not a separate app, but it just works like an audio app when you
can shut off. Yeah. Okay. There you go.
Yeah.
Well, then maybe I'll check it out.
But I don't know if the point of having it is really sustained when you do that. I mean, because I'm sure that a lot of those are the recordings are on Adagio anyway.
Right. Sure.
But I've put that video on because I have right now. My mom got me a birthday present last year. She got me a subscription for a year, and I have I've been in a room with my sister-in-law and my nieces, and I have just on vacation this summer. I would like pop it on. And they're enthralled. The kids are enthralled. And my middle school students, too. For some reason, if I play any kind of classical or any concert band music while they're walking into the room, they'll just like blast concert B-flat scales over the top of it. But if I put one of these videos on, they just stare at it like there's nothing else in the whole universe. And I don't know, I think the production is really good. The camera angles are awesome. Like every part of the music is highlighted by the camera going straight to that part.
It's a producer that knows what they're doing.
Right.
Yeah. If I can tell you that if my son if I showed him had any inkling towards that, then it would be on all the time. So it's not that he hasn't; he just hasn't even seen it. But yeah, it's interesting. There's also there's an amazing amount of Phish videos on YouTube, and I don't tend to watch them. I tend to listen a lot more, just kind of like when I'm out and about or whatever. It's kind of interesting. So, but it's good. I do appreciate the fact that all of that stuff is waiting for me. I mean, the entire Berlin catalog is waiting for me if I ever subscribe and want to start diving into videos, as is all of Phish's output on YouTube, etc. So.
All right. Well, it's getting late. Do you want to try to explain Phish to me in the remaining moments of this?
Well, yeah. I mean, I like your colleague Ben Denny, who I took to his first show. Like when I had seen at that. This was my freshman year of college.
The stories about that I hear about you all going to Phish shows are, by the way, way more entertaining to me than any recording of Phish I've ever heard.
We made some bad decisions back in the day. So yeah, like there was I told you I went to Canada. Yeah, I actually flipped over a van on the way home in a blizzard. So that was cool. Everybody lived barely, but anyway, moving right along. That was 26 years ago. 26 years ago next month. But anyway, the first time I saw Phish live, I heard a couple of albums like at Tanglewood. My roommate, Russell Beebe, who is still to this day is my best friend. He played me some Phish, and I appreciated it, but it didn't scream at me. And he told me that he was going to this was New Year's '93. He told me that he was going to see Phish. I asked him what he was doing for New Year's. He said he was going to see Phish at the Centrum, and I said, if you can grab me a ticket, then get me a ticket. And he got me a 10th row center seat on the floor at the Worcester Centrum. And within the first tune, these four goofy, they look like they had just stumbled out of a Dungeons and Dragons tournament. There was no tight pants. They were all wearing shirts. There was no scarves hanging off of the mic stand. I mean, it was just four goofy dudes. And they launched into this tune, and it changed my life. On the you hear about people who have these burning bush religious spiritual experiences, where God is talking to them. I mean, that's how strong the music just floored me. And sure enough, the following December, almost a year later, I flew down to Arizona to take my mentor, Sam Pilafian, who recorded with Pink Floyd on the Wall, and he toured with the Duke Ellington Orchestra and with the Metropolitan Opera and was the founding tuba player of Empire Brass. And, I mean, the guy has a resume that's unmatched in the tuba world in history. And I flew down there just to take him to a Phish concert. And they happened to open the show with the exact same tune that I saw them open with, which the odds of that are not good. And anyway, there was a moment where he was just standing there, basically still. And this was 2 minutes in, and the opening guitar solo is this crazy. At this period, it's not like this now, but it was this crazy, jarring, noise that was musical, but it was very, very angular. And then all of a sudden, the guitar player flicked a switch, and there was this flourish that just propelled to this sustained high note. It got tonal, and then he started straight up rocking. And right after that, the drummer ripped off this quarter note triplet fill that exploded to another one of these downbeats where everything went boom. And that was the moment when Sam, completely involuntary, he wasn't saying this towards me, towards the band, he double fist pumped and screamed bleep yeah at the top of his lungs. And that was the single most validating moment of my entire 44 and a half years on planet Earth. I mean, this is a guy that when he died back in April, he got a full obituary. Like the next day I was talking to an obituary writer from the New York Times. It's like, that's the first and the last tuba player that's ever going to get their obituary into the New York Times. And and he had that exact same reaction, and he was absolutely floored by that first set that he saw. There was that straight ahead rocker. There was they sang a barbershop quartet tune. The second set they played one of their tunes for 25 minutes, which went way out both rhythmically and tonally, and then eventually came back in. There was a couple of segues where they're just all of a sudden are playing a different tune. They covered Led Zeppelin's Good Times, Bad Times, cover tunes, bluegrass tunes. I mean, the versatility is unmatched. And so I immediately, all four of them were like that first night were all on my list of like the 10 most influential musicians in my life, and that was one concert, and there's been 200 since. So,
do you have memory solid enough of the dates of those two concerts where, because I know that their performances are well documented. Like, have you gone back and listened to specifically those two shows?
I could sing you like disturbingly long sections of all of those tunes. Like I'm talking into the mic right now at the exact tempo. Like it would probably you'd be worried about me if I did that. So yes. Yeah, the first if you want a link to one thing from my first show, which was 12/31/93, and I can actually I will find the link for you right now. But there's a song called Harry Hood, which they essentially closed the last set with. And that here, I'll mute this so that when I hit this to get the link, it doesn't start playing. I'll put this in the notes, and the beginning is you'll hear they're not the best singers in the world. They're not horrible, but that's not really their, the solo. The solo section of this Harry Hood is, for my taste, is transcendental. It's amazing. So, as I joked that first night, basically there was someone from the Phish organization on the way out who might as well have just told me that they needed my routing and account numbers for my checking account and that they would be in touch. So it's like, I was like, yeah, they took all of my disposable income for until I started actually making real money, which was like another, 7 years later. So yeah, they got all of it.
Wow. Yeah, see, you're selling me. Like I have a genuine interest in reliving that moment of your life, having heard you tell me that story. So I'm looking forward to the link.
Yeah. It really did. It changed. I mean, it's such a cliche, but every once in a while, cliches I'm figuring out in my old age. Cliches exist for a reason, because sometimes they really tell a story in a pointed way. But like I changed as a musician that night. I mean, it inspired me to be a better tuba player. The other thing that you'll hear in that jam is that when that thing first starts, the volume comes way down. This is for a rock band. I mean, the volume comes way down, and like a great jazz player, the very first lick that the guitar player plays in that solo is the Auld Lang Syne lick, which it's a New Year's Eve concert. And then the way that he gets out of that is just silky smooth, and then it's very patient. And there's like, when Phish is at its best, there are sometimes builds that are so slow and patient that it can. I mean, it's like the last movement of Mahler 3. Like, you know what's coming. you know how long it's going to take, and it's just like the patience of taking that long to get there. It can be magical. And talk about, some people wish we laughed less on the Brass Junkies. Other people wish that we probably screwed around more and don't like it when we get serious. Some people hear Phish, some amazing musicians will hear Phish and hear that if you listen to that recording and say that the drummer is bad, I can't help you, because he is objectively good at the drums, but it also might not hit your soul on any level whatsoever. And that's okay, right? Like, that's okay. That's true of all art, podcasts or rock bands or string quartets or whatever. But the technical proficiency and the compositions and their execution, it just smashed every single button that I have. And and then the rest is history.
Yeah, wow. The only thing that's anywhere close to that for me is, are you familiar with Chris Thiele, the mandolinist?
Yep.
Yeah, I remember seeing early days of his group, the Punch Brothers.
Yeah,
watching
sure.
Him, before they were as big as they are now, just playing in a small club in New York City, watching them do a show on New Year's Eve they would do this show on New Year's Eve of all covers. Watching them take like a bluegrass standard, and then his solo over just like a 1/5 in the bass would slowly transform into one of Bach's violin sonatas,
right?
Only on the mandolin.
Yeah.
Just the commonality between the language of bluegrass.
Yeah.
And this violin sonata was like, there was no distinction in his mind how seamlessly he could weave. And then
that's awesome.
The band just puts down their instruments and he finishes most of the movement of it, and then they pick back up their instruments, and then the banjo solo somehow pivots the notes in rhythm into a metric modulation, which takes them into a Radiohead cover.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm like, what?
Yep. I love that stuff. It's so creative, and that's the cool thing about music, is that somebody could hear that and be impressed by it, but like on some level, but not like bring it up on a podcast years later impressed, just like really impressed at the conception of it, the concept, and then the execution. But then there's like that certain something that you can't really put your finger on, that is, that kind of makes it, which is why when Sam instantly got that on the most like basic level possible, like it was just completely surreal. I mean, it was insane that my mentor, who had lots of opinions about music, that he got it. I've taken Rex Martin to a Phish show, Pat Sheridan, Sam Pilafian, and Ben Denny. One of those people doesn't belong on that list, but I'll throw Ben on there. I'll throw him a bone. So see, I can't say nice things about my friends for too long. I get mean eventually, because that's what we do to each other. So, anyway. Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, totally. Well, 10:20. Thanks for hanging so late. I'm sure you have to probably start thinking about bed. Yeah, totally. I'm proud I didn't need to drink the coffee that I made myself, although I haven't had coffee. My nutritionist told me not to drink coffee after 3 p.m. I made some just in case. You're a coffee guy, aren't you?
Oh yeah, big time.
Yeah, we'll have to do this again sometime. I mean, gosh, we didn't talk about Arnold Jacobs. I have questions about Sam. I'd love to pick your brain about.
Sure.
One day. Coffee. Well, yeah, the list goes on.
That'd be great.
There it is. All right, Andrew Hitz. This has
All
been
right.
good.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much. I will talk to you hopefully soon.
Sounds good. All right, man.
Take care.
All right. Yep, you too.